Good day, this is Shauna Casey, and welcome to this SOS educational webcast, Hire Away, Top Hiring Tips for Your Equity Compensation Department. Due to the large number of attendees, no conference call service is available for this webcast. The sound will broadcast through your computer speakers. However, if you wish to ask a question at any time during the presentation, please feel free to type it into the Q&A panel of your GoToWebcast console, and we will do our best to answer them as they come in. Any questions that we don't get a chance to address during the webcast, we will follow up with afterwards in an email. This morning we sent an email with a link to the presentation materials to everyone that registered as of 10 a.m. Pacific this morning. You can also find the link to the materials under the Event Resources tab on your GoToWebcast console. This session will also be recorded, and we will send a link to the recording and materials in the next day or two. I hope that all of you are familiar with Stock and Option Solutions, or SOS as we are more commonly known. For those of you who are not, SOS is a leading stock administration, staffing, consulting, and outsourcing firm within the equity compensation marketplace. SOS provides interim and permanent placement, expert project resources, and total outsourcing solutions. To learn more, you can visit us online at www.sos-team.com or call us at 408-979-8700. Next, I'd like to introduce you to our speakers for today's session. We are pleased to have Marianne Friebel of Dolby Laboratories and our own Andrea Best on the panel today. Next is our standard disclaimer slide. We'd like to remind you to consult your own advisors before making any changes. Thank you all for joining us today, and with that, I'll turn this presentation over to Andrea, who will introduce our topic and cover the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shauna. Excited to be here and getting to talk on this fun topic with you all. Thank you very much for joining. Looking forward to digging in and helping you successfully take care of your equity compensation resource needs. So we're going to start off with our agenda. First, we're going to cover the challenges of hiring. I think those are the challenges you're probably quite familiar with because that's brought you to our presentation today. We're going to then look at how you can assess the needs of your department on several different levels. Also, how you can assess your own management style and what that means for making the right fit when you're choosing to bring a resource in. Then we're going to discuss job descriptions, finding candidates, some interview tips, and finally, when you get to that point, making an offer. We're also going to go into some post-hire tips. I think it's really important to round out our conversation about getting the right fit with how you make them successful, given the fact that turnover can be incredibly high, and we usually get our hires right about 50% of the time. So flip a coin, and if you're 51%, then you're ahead of the curve as far as choosing the right people for your team. And then we're going to also close out with alternatives to hiring. Maybe go through this whole explanation and you realize it sounds like a lot of work. There are some alternatives for you. And then we're going to leave you with some top takeaways. So the challenge of hiring. We've got our crystal ball here, and unfortunately I don't have one on my desk so that I could just take a look into it and know with certainty every time that that I'm going to get the right resource for the needs that I have, and make that right fit for my team, and have someone who's going to be successful and happy for a long time. So it is a huge challenge, and there are several things that are up against us, and so we're going to talk about those to start us off. As you know, finding the right qualified candidate is a challenge. You want to make sure that that person is the right level for your needs, and that can even be a challenge from the get-go in assessing what it is that is most critical for the position that you're looking to fill. Because we are so specialized, we're in a niche, that can make it more challenging because you can't just plug anyone in and they'll be ready to go. There are a lot of very niche things they're going to need to know. You may also want them to wear multiple hats, which can be very challenging in a world where perhaps key people in our world have specialized significantly, so they might not be able to wear all those different hats for you. There's a lot of pressure now to give flexibility, work from home. Perhaps you're not the kind of company that's comfortable with that, or perhaps your department requires, because of certain processes, that you have someone on site. So that can also be a challenge. And if you're in a location like the California Bay Area, where we are located, then you're competing with a lot of companies for the same top talent. So that location itself can be really challenging. Or say your company headquartered in a location where there aren't a lot of headquarters, you may have the opposite problem, and there aren't a lot of resources available with the skill set that you need. Also, salary, budget, compensation requirements are going up. Perhaps budgets aren't following suit. That could definitely be a challenge to make it more difficult for you to find that right person, or once you find them, be able to afford them. So for all these reasons, I already talked about competition. This is a challenge, but it certainly is something that you can overcome. And, if you get the wrong hire, this can be very expensive. And I think that because a lot of times these costs seem externalized to us, or they're not necessarily hitting your bottom line in a very clear-cut way, we may not realize just how expensive it is to get this wrong. Depending on who you talk to, a lot of people say it's 30% of an employee's salary in lost productivity, or the cost of even recruiting can be significant. Say you're bringing in someone to help you find someone, they may charge 25 or 30% of that individual's first year salary just to make that connection. You may be very happy to pay that to get the right person, but if they leave in a year, you're going to have to do that all over again. There's also some statistics that are saying that the higher the compensation, the higher the skill set, the more cost it is to your company to deal with turnover, to lose that person. So it could end up being a total cost of 2 to 3 times the salary of that employee. So if you're talking about 6-figure employees, which often we are, this is not an insignificant amount of money that you could be costing to not get that right hire the first time. So there's also the time and effort of training. We all put a lot of investment in that. There's a cost to that. And then what if, you lose someone, or you get the wrong person in there, they make mistakes? There can be a significant financial impact for making mistakes. This is a high-profile role that you are filling, so there can be a lot of negative impacts if we're not getting this right. Also, you're at a disadvantage because you're looking to hire for a position that isn't your business's core business. Whatever you're doing, maybe your company provides software, or your company provides hardware, or whatever your company does, equity compensation isn't it. So you have to become an expert in this other thing in order to make sure you're getting that right fit. And one bad apple can spoil the bunch. I mean, you bring the wrong person in, it can cause team discontent. Your team can be becoming disengaged. There can be conflicts, and that can really cause your work product and productivity to go down. So you never want to bring someone in who isn't a good cultural fit for your team. And when someone walks out the door, I'm sure many of you have suffered from this, experienced the pain of lost historical knowledge just walking out the door. So when you bring someone else in, they have to figure everything out from scratch. Perhaps not all your processes documented, or if they are, they might not be detailed enough for someone new to just walk in seamlessly and without mistakes. So these are all some challenges that are, I think, really important for you to be considering if you're deciding if hiring for yourself is the right thing for you.
Thanks, Andrea. So I'll move into kind of the next phase of this whole process. And so we wanted to talk about assessing your department's needs. This is really, I think, a crucial part of the entire process. It's going to lead to the success of hiring the right candidate who's going to be successful in the organization and then stick around. But we also wanted to talk first, too, about this piece of the process, kind of making your case to management, whether you are looking to create a new role, it's a replacement, or if you want to, say, up-level or change a current role that you're replacing. It's really important. You're going to have to sell your case. So you want to go in prepared, do your research, know exactly what you're going to be asking for, and be able to address the questions of why you need this. So one of the things you really want to determine what your near and long-term goals are for managing your function. We all know what we need to do day to day to get through the day to make sure everything is done efficiently and effectively. But also long-term, what do you think? What would planning out? What would the function look like within your organization long term? And those are looking at things like what's the nice to have versus the needs to have, and always looking at the ROI. So what's the value add for this requested resource? You know, perhaps it could be that you, by maybe up-leveling the role, you're going to bring in somebody with more technical expertise that in the long term may save you in terms of looking outside the company to provide some technical enhancements that might help you kind of leverage some of your employee communications, things like that. Always the goal is to be proactive versus reactive, so that's an important part in sort of planning out what you think this role can do for you, for the organization. And then one thing I think that's always really helpful is assessing your current roles and responsibilities. We all know we come in, we do our job every day, your team does their job, but sometimes it's really helpful to just drill down and say, okay, so what specifically are you working on today? I know you're responsible for this this piece of the function, but and ask where are you challenged? What resources would really help you? What are you lacking, and what would be helpful for you to have? Ask that of your team members too, your current team. That's going to help you to kind of assess what your needs are and then prepare the case to management. And then selling your case. Know your audience. Who are you speaking to? Is this individual, is it your manager, or is it the head of HR? Do they want the bullet points, or do they want the really extensive research and the background, and this is exactly what they're going to be asking for? Sometimes I find usually it's somewhere in middle ground. Money talks. So really be prepared to explain that, the ROI. Say what you're going to be able to do with these additional resources that's really going to benefit and bring value to the department and the function and the organization overall. And be able to have some clear examples. This person I want to bring on, say, because they're going to help us develop a new employee portal and some additional training tools that our HR partners have been asking for, and here's some of the things they would do. So use clear examples. And provide them some examples, even of maybe some possible failures that you had from not having the resources. This is what we want to avoid happening in the future. So anyway, so like I say, you really want to kind of look to making your case and presenting your case and selling your case.
And Marianne, one other thing before you go to the next slide, I just wanted to mention is I don't think it was overtly stated in the slide, but I think when you're doing that, assessing current roles and responsibilities, it's also important to have an understanding of how long things take. I think that will be a question that management will ask of you. So if you're understanding the time commitments that your team already has, where they're not able to get to things, and understanding the lay of that land with some degree of specificity, that can really help make your case to say, we just don't have enough bandwidth with our current team setup, given the responsibilities, to be able to handle these types of deliverables, and then making the case of what that new resource is going to get you.
Yeah, that's great, definitely. I'm going to just move on here to departmental cultural assessment. So really, it's important if you're going to bring the right candidate in, you need to really have a thorough understanding and embrace what your department's culture is. You want that person to be a fit. So really, how does your department work? What's their purpose? How do they define being successful? What's the basic philosophies? What are their beliefs and principles? Is it all about compliance and avoiding risk for the company? Is it really a lot about assuring your employees see value in the equity program? So really having a thorough understanding of the department philosophy and the priorities. What's really important? Is your department going to be focusing and spending their time? So those are all really key important things because, like I say, you want the person that you bring on to be successful and to fit within the organization. So you want to assure that you are able to clearly convey what the department's culture is. And on top of the department, the company in general, really assess what the core values are. What is the company, what are the principles that guide the company? They really help to define the company and the individual department's culture, and that's going to be key and important in the people that you bring on and their success going forward. Got a bullet point here that sometimes, though, you have to keep in mind that company core values might influence, as they do influence the department's core values. There could be not necessarily a conflict, but they might not be that compatible. For example, companies' core values that might advocate creativity and playfulness. This isn't always something that maybe would lead to success for the stock administration function. Of course, it can always be a part of it, but it's really also important to understand how the company core values influence and impact the department values and how those work together. So next here, we just wanted to kind of do a little kind of talk about personally our experiences. And so I wanted to talk a bit just about Dolby core values, just to kind of give an explanation sort of where Dolby kind of is coming from. And our founder, Ray Dolby, actually started the company a little over 50 years ago. And a lot of what he felt was important really carries on today. In addition to being a really brilliant scientist and inventor, a lot of the things that he fostered still or valued still carry on today. The individual creativity and teamwork, being curious, but also really focusing on practical problem solving, a lot of teamwork, forward thinking, a lot of respect, and definitely a true work-life balance. And those things continue to carry on, and it really impacts kind of who we are, what we do, and how we're successful. Oh, Andrea, did you want to kind of speak to SOS?
Absolutely, yeah, thank you. So I'm a huge supporter of linking core values to what we do as professionals and how we behave as companies. And, Stock Option Solutions has selected 5 core values that we feel are foundational to everything that we do and how we behave, both within the company and with clients. So excellence, integrity, opportunity, passion, teamwork, and the way that we've defined them are things that are actually actionable for us that we use in our everyday decision making. So I think it can be really important for you when you're screening candidates to ask them, what are their core values, and see how those core values connect to the values of your company. And if there's overlap, that's wonderful. If they're complementary, that's wonderful. And if there are things that are odds, I think it's an area to explore and better understand, because we do ask our team members when they're making tough decisions that have competing interests to take a look at the core values and see how they inform their decisions. Well, if I do this, is this going to deliver a wow experience for our clients? If I do this, is this going to ensure that I'm in integrity? If I choose this over that, is that because I'm pursuing opportunity? Is that because that's something that we're passionate about? Am I serving the team with the decisions that I'm making? So all of these things, we ask them to actually take those things to heart, consider how they are affecting the decisions they're making on a day-to-day basis, and therefore, the core values of your organization, they set the tone for your culture, and therefore you want to make sure that whomever's coming in, is aligned with those values.
Thanks, Andrea. So next, we wanted to move into talking about assessing your management style. We've talked about first, assessing the department, the overall organization, but really important to say know yourself. Called this kind of a manager know thyself, and take a look at be somewhat self-reflective. Understand really your management style. Are you hands-on, hands-off? Are you the micromanager? That's not, there's a lot of negative connotations with that, but you know what? You are who you are, and, you do what makes you successful. I feel like we all work to our strengths, or we should be. So use that, but know the type of kind of your management style. Are you a delegator? Are you visionary, or not that it's a bad thing, but maybe your whole focus is really just making sure that you meet the department's requirements. But really kind of understand who you are, because you're going to need to convey that to the person, your candidates, and then the person that you ultimately hire, because it's got to be a fit personality-wise and work style-wise as well.
That's right. And Marianne, I just wanted to say that I think asking your candidates what they prefer a management style-wise can really help you understand if you have a fit. So say you like to be really hands-on, and they say, you know what, I really like it when my manager just tells me what to do, and then I go sit in the corner and do it. And you want to be interactive, right? So you may be able to see some signs there that they're not the best fit for the environment you want to create, or for the type of working relationship that you hope to have. Once you understand yourself, and therefore can ask them what is important to them in a manager.
Yep, absolutely. So yes, exactly. So know yourself, and then be able to communicate it and find that right person. Make sure that their style then is going to fit with yours by asking the right questions. And so in terms of, we all, I think hopefully we know our strengths, but it's also, I think, helpful to really understand what maybe your weaknesses are. Just not necessarily because you want to address and change them, but just understand where you're coming from and how that might impact your the potential candidate and or the person that you ultimately hire. Do you have impossibly high standards or unrealistic expectations? What are your communication skills like? How are you going to be able to communicate with this individual? So these are just some of the things to keep in mind. The whole idea of how well do you handle stress, stress management, delegation. Do you have difficulty in delegating and letting go? These are all going to be things that are going to impact you as a manager, and then how you interact with and relate to the person that you ultimately hire.
Yeah, those are all really great points, Marianne, because if you're saying, I'm so busy, I need someone to come in here and take the workload off me, but you are not comfortable delegating at the end of the day, guess what? That's not going to be a successful hire. And if you're someone who doesn't deal with stress very well, if you have a very high stress environment and you're bringing someone into that, they may have a very short tenure. So I think it's really important to get a handle on the situation, and also be very upfront with the person you're bringing in about some of the limitations, some of the challenges they're going to face, so they can be prepared and they don't just run right out the door
right.
after their first couple of weeks. Okay, so with that, we're going to transition over to job descriptions. And if you're like me, and I think Marianne too, this isn't our favorite thing to do. We were discussing job descriptions and how often you can read some of these, and like it could be multiple pages, lots of bullet points, and you read the whole thing and you still have no idea what the job is. And I'd say that that's not the best strategy for being successful. So you definitely want to be able to communicate something clear enough so that the people applying know what it is that you're needing and what the position entails. So, of course, you also want to attract candidates, and we're going to be talking about that as well. So, making it appear like the dream job that they want, and not just appear, but what I mean to say is characterize it well enough so they can see the dream in it, I think is, it's a big task. So, some important things when you're sitting down to write the job description, obviously, what is this person going to be doing on a day-to-day basis? And I think this is an area where we could really all use a lot of improvement. Sometimes we use a lot of vague generalities, and we don't get to the heart of the matter, so someone will walk away after reading that really having no clue what their day-to-day life would be like. Highlighting the responsibilities and the key deliverables, I think, can be really important. If you're clear on the key deliverables, that at least will give them more of a sense of some, specific things that they're going to be required to do. So obviously the location, if travel is required, it's important to make that clear. Again, many people are wanting remote work, so if there's something you're comfortable with, highlight that because it's a huge selling point. Remember, this process is about screening and choosing the best candidate, but they're doing the same thing. They're screening and trying to choose the best next steps for their career. So it is important for the employer to do their due diligence and present themselves in the best possible light. So if there's special skills or requirements, you want to highlight those. If they're not requirements, make that clear as nice to have so you don't lose some, really good candidates because they think something is a requirement that really isn't. Keywords I think are really important to help, especially to make this a searchable thing. It's the most important terminology that a candidate might search for. Make sure that's in there. And, the level is important too to be clear on. And I've noticed this in working with some candidates in our recruiting pipeline that the title can actually be a really important thing. And, if it's a difference between, a senior role, a manager role, a director role, those terms can really be a deciding factor for some and whether they want to entertain an opportunity at all. So I would say try to shoot for the best possible title depending on the skill set that you want, and that could even be an opportunity. We'll talk about negotiation later, but it could even be an opportunity for negotiation if there's a sticking point for the right candidate is that title. If there's something special about your company, special about the culture, like say you've got a slide that goes through your offices, you've got amazing catered lunches, you have massages coming in or whatever all the perks are that are out there. Highlight some of those. I think that it is very interesting. People spend so much of their time working that if you can make it fun, exciting, or see the kind of perks and benefits they can get, it could set you up for the most applicants possible. And and you may want to consider taking a look at similar openings at other companies and how they're presenting their job descriptions. So, to attract top talent, like I said before, it requires some work on our part. We want to be the employer of choice. We want people to seek us out and want to work for us. That really helps us get the best possible candidates, as well as it helps with the negotiation period as well if they really are committed and wanting to work for your company. So, what yummy bits of cheese can we put out there to entice? So some of the things that are important for you to be an all-star employer, I understand that in your department, in your space, you may not have control over all these factors, but you certainly can influence things. And if you take notice of them, and then maybe you have conversations with the key stakeholders within your organization who can move the needle on these things, it can really help your chances of getting the right people. For example, your Glassdoor count. If you're not familiar with it, I encourage you to go on there, check it out. This is a place where a lot of candidates are going to get the scoop on you. People who interview with you can leave information about what the interview process entails. They can put, your employees may be putting reviews of the company, reviews of your CEO, information about their compensation. You can look it up by title, and there's a lot of information there. And, companies can take ownership of that at a fee, but they can take some ownership of that, or you could do a grassroots campaign. If you know you have a lot of really happy employees, ask them to go on Glassdoor and give a positive review. And see if you can't get, because sometimes the disgruntled people are the ones that take the time to go and do that. So how can you encourage your team if they're excited about your organization, the opportunities there to go on and say something nice? Also, understanding your unique value proposition for candidates. What makes you a good employer? Why is this a good career choice for them for their next phase? And what can they learn in this position? How can they grow? I think that's really important for you to consider. The best employers, to my mind, are the ones that are encouraging growth in some capacity. And I think that's where you get your best, most dedicated, most engaged employees, is when they're continuing to see themselves advance and getting that satisfaction of growth. So you can, take a look at that and consider that, and create a narrative where you discuss, as an employee of ours, this is the way we invest in you. This is the opportunity that's in front of you. You could, in the next however many years, get from here to here. So understand what that is and be able to convey that clearly. Also, if your company does engagement surveys and you have positive results on those, then you might want to toot your own horn and share that this many percent of the team is engaged or happy. They feel good about their managers. They feel, like they're well rewarded for their efforts. So that's something you can look into and perhaps have as a talking point in your conversations with candidates. And, building a cheer team. If you have a lot of really happy people in your department and you include them in your interview process, they can share their experiences of working with your team and why they're there, and why that person should join as well. So, finding potential candidates, there are a lot of options for you. I think LinkedIn is becoming more and more a place where people are looking. You have your own in-house recruiting team potentially that you can leverage. Definitely your network, if you are involved in some of the industry organizations, they can be a great source, and you may have colleagues or former colleagues, friends, and people you've met over the years who may know of people who are looking and can put in a good word for you. Of course, in addition to this, there are companies like Stock and Option Solutions that specialize in this that can help you, full cycle to whether it's, hey, maybe you need help interviewing because maybe you're a manager who doesn't have this particular skill set, and you want to make sure that, their resume reflects their actual experience. And you can get help with screening. You can get help with identifying candidates. You can get, someone to help with, sourcing the whole way and just presenting you as someone, a placement opportunity type of thing. So there is help that you can do outside of your organization if you feel like you're not specialized well enough to be able to handle, the full cycle, and maybe perhaps you don't have enough time to add another full-time job to your plate. And also talking to your vendors. They may have some ideas for you, and then these people are probably going to have experience with the systems that you use, so that can be a great source as well.
Yeah, and Andrea, I wanted to mention another possibility to, and I've actually had some personal success with this over the years, is looking internally within your organization, maybe not somebody already in the stock administration department, but someone who maybe has some familiarity with it, or, you know, one of your internal partners. I've found some great resources within the company before that really have worked out well. It might be that person that's sort of more in a support role, but may have some familiarity with stock administration, or just somebody that, you know, who expresses an interest in learning about the industry and, you know, and the field. That you could have a wealth of potential candidates right kind of under your nose there, and definitely some win-wins there. They're already an employee of the company. They understand and know the company values how things work, and hopefully then you also have some experience with sort of with their background and how well they work.
That's a great point. Thank you. Absolutely. I think you're going to be taking the baton for interviewing.
Yeah. Yep. Moving on to the interviewing. Once you've got your candidates, once you've done your sourcing and brought some candidates in, obviously the next step is the interview process. And we kind of want to talk about the skills interview. So one thing that I think can be really helpful is say, leveraging your A players. Bring in other folks, part of the process, part of the interview process, who really understand the function, and maybe even some of your internal partners that can help sort of address and bring out some skill sets that would help this person be successful in the role, or to see if this person has those skill sets. You want to use sort of the behavioral interview questions, not just tell me about your experience, but really dig down to be able to kind of get a feel for how this person works and how they deal with certain work environments. Ask them to walk you through things. Not just it shouldn't be just a reiteration of the resume. You've already got that, you've read that, and you've seen what their background is. Next step is really to ask them to explain more thoroughly and in depth. Ask them to walk you through a technical process. How would you manage something? Say in this role, they're going to have to be using Excel quite a bit, and there's certain analysis that needs to get done. Ask them how they would manage this exactly. Get specifics on how they would handle specific situations. Use the hypothetical and find out how this individual might deal with challenges that they would face. Asking for the details in terms of how they have managed things in the past, how they tackle things currently, how they do things, exactly what they do, and like I say, the hypothetical, looking sort of down the road, if situations came up, how would they handle that, and specifically what would they do? And so on our next slide, these are pretty, I think, fairly obvious, but always good to sort of address the what not to ask. Personal details that aren't relevant for the job, marital status, age, political and religious beliefs. I'd say most of us know to definitely to avoid these, but important to keep in mind, because sometimes something you may think is very innocuous might not be. I had a coworker once who was interviewing someone. Thought the conversation was fairly friendly, and something came up about the candidate had gone to the same high school as the interviewee's spouse, and so the first question was, "Oh, wow," to see if maybe they knew each other. And so, "What year did you graduate?" was the question. Then the candidate immediately said, "You can't ask me that." So basically, it was asking the age. So as I said, sometimes you know not to ask a certain questions, but think about the question that you are asking, and maybe that's not the intent, but always to keep in mind sort of the context of what you're asking and what information it might be soliciting. And then always want to look for the red flags, the job hopper. It could be, you don't want to always assume that just because there's been a lot of job changes, that's an issue. So this is something, if you do see that, really drill down on that and, ask the question and get a thorough understanding of why their history is what it is. The fibber, tall tale teller, I call this also the embellisher. Usually you can get a sense for that. So that might not be someone that fits well with your team. As the complainer, this I always find definitely, at least for me personally, very off-putting, because if they're complaining about their former employer to you, that could carry forward. It might just be sort of their general nature. So it's just some things to look forward or look very thoroughly at. The tardy person, the unprepared person, someone who cannot provide a direct supervisor as a reference. And then the next 2 bullet points are pretty much the extreme ends of the spectrum. Pretty much, most of us want someone probably somewhere in the middle between the no pulse and the too excited bouncing off the wall. So just some other things to kind of look for and look at and assess as you're going through the interview process.
And actually, one thing I wanted to add, Marian, is that if you notice someone has some kind of odd behavior in the interview, especially with the last 2, no pulse or too excited, it could be that they're very nervous. And I think that if everything else on paper is looking really good, you might want to give them a little bit of a second chance, right, to have a more relaxed secondary discussion. I wouldn't advocate for writing them off right away because, especially if someone's not interviewing frequently, it can be a particularly nerve-wracking experience. So just, it could be the too excited or the no pulse could actually be a matter of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Not advocating that, immediately that's the go-to. Sorry, you are far too, at one end of the spectrum, but definitely just kind of things to pay attention to. But I thoroughly agree. Yeah, always, I think giving the benefit of the doubt in the interview process, especially, that's why most times we'll have someone back for more than one. There's always the time to kind of allow for that potential nerves and things that might have come up that would have impacted that the initial interview. Then once you've gone through the interview process, you're going to be selecting candidates. You need to compare the candidates. Figure out what you absolutely need. What are the non-negotiables? What do you absolutely have to have, in the candidate? Then start to develop some key metrics. It really is helpful to, I think, kind of score the candidates numerically. Really, do your qualitative assessment. Look at sort of where each candidate falls in terms of what your metrics are, and and score them. It'll really help kind of give you, I think, a better gauge of where your candidates are falling in terms of the best candidate for the role.
Absolutely, and especially if you have a team interview situation where multiple people are weighing in on the hire, it can really help you to stay organized by having some sort of a numerical process, having metrics, and then being able to kind of fill in everyone's perspective and then average that out and see where you land. And of course, including a qualitative assessment, so you can maybe ask the people who are interviewing for you and your team to provide some sort of a write-up of their overall experience. You want to try to balance out those gut feelings. Like sometimes there's just someone you really get along with, and that can overtake some of the hard skills or some of the other things. So you want to be able to find that balance and make sure that you're covering all those bases as you're making your decision. All right, so now we're going to talk about making an offer. I guess, if someone put all this cash in front of me, that would definitely be motivating. But in lieu of that, you have to come up with some strategies for, making the offer. And in some cases, larger companies often have levels that have associated compensation ranges and, as well as equity offerings. So make sure that, if you want a certain level of candidate that you're advocating for a certain level within your organization, that's going to be able to get you the most bang for your buck for the position. Understanding what roles pay outside of your organization can really help, because that's what's going to be setting the tone for the expectations of this candidate. And I would definitely advocate for, throughout the interview process, as soon as you can, having an understanding of what they're looking for. Now, it's not that easy, because candidates are being advised not to give their requirements first, and with good reason. They want that bargaining power too. At the same time, as an employer, you don't want to spend a lot of time wooing someone who's completely out of range, and where you're never going to be able to meet in the middle. So I think, sussing that out sooner than later is really helpful. I think it helps to have the candidate understand where you're coming from, that your desire is to get them what they're looking for, if it's at all possible. So understanding what that is important. And then, I'm not an advocate for lowballing on offers. I think it sets a really bad tone for the beginning of the project, for the beginning of the onboarding process. They may take that offer if they feel desperate, or they feel like, worried that there's not going to be another opportunity on the horizon. But they may still be looking for another job if they're not happy with their compensation. So I recommend getting it right. Obviously, it has to be right. Has to be, the company has to see the value, and they have to see the value. And if you get it right for all parties, and it's a win across the board, I think that's where you're in the best position to be able to, have someone who's going to have a long tenure with you and not have turnover in a year and have to do this all over again. You can be really short-sighted. It can be way more expensive for you. So, I would say going a little bit above, what you're hoping can actually be cost savings in the end if it means you're bringing on someone who's happy. And then if it's not possible to get where they want right away, you can build a plan for that too. And that could be a great, really positive way where you say, all right, I know you want to be here. Our starting salary is here. Let's talk about a plan for your development that can get you to where you want to go and beyond in the next however long. And then to build a plan, you may have some training components or some expectations on them for skill sets that they need to improve or certain processes they need to take over. Therefore, they're focused on growth and giving the most ROI for the company, and they're happy to do it because they know that there's going to be benefits to them as well. And that being said, also it's okay to push back on candidates. In some cases, they may put a Hail Mary out there. They want something very high, but in their minds, knowing their fallback position might be much lower than that. If you suspect that's happening, I think it's always good to have a frank, kind, compassionate conversation about what their needs are, where they feel their value is, why they're asking for what they're asking, and then work from there to find something that works for all parties. And then, you may need to explain to them or internally where this is coming from, why you're trying to target a certain comp structure. Also, the benefits, I think, are important things to consider. So if you're not, you're an employee already, so you have some sense, but it's always good to work with your internal partners who can provide benefit information, especially if it's quantified. You can show them the value they're getting per year for those benefits. And if something like vacation is something that's really a great benefit at your company, and you can discuss the value of that to the employee, or perhaps stock options, things like that. Maybe there's a bonus plan, and all of that. Look at the big picture, and then if you also have discounts and other services, and like dry cleaning coming to your offices, all that stuff. Make sure you're aware and present that as a full package. And I think, we might have discussed most of these points when I was talking on the other slide. So I don't know that I really need to go into any more depth otherwise to say that I think taking a forward look, having an understanding, a deep understanding of their needs, of their desires, of where they're looking to take their career, and understanding how that coincides with your department, your company, and the future within your organization can really help you build an offer that is going to be accepted.
Great. Thanks. Andrea, with that, I'm going to move into kind of the next step here. So we've done, a lot of the challenging part here. We've, assessed our needs, we've sourced, we've brought in candidates, and we've found our ideal candidate. So yes, success at this point, but this is just the first step. The success really is going to come in the long term, and some of the things that really can help to support that are, the onboarding from the very first step. First impressions are always key. So you want, when they walk in the door, make the experience as positive and productive as possible. Do what you can to impart knowledge. Nobody likes to come in floundering. It's always a challenge to come into a new company, a new role, and not have that thorough understanding that you had from maybe the where you left. So really help that person to get up to speed and get comfortable as quickly as possible. You don't have to. I'm not an advocate of a lot of hand-holding, but guiding in helping people to know where to look for resources and information. Definitely, helping and providing the information, but also that imparting the knowledge in giving them where the path starts. Here's where you're going to go to look for this information. Where can I help you more? But here, really make sure that they are provided all of that information to be successful from the start, and really creating a sense of inclusion. You want them to be feeling like a part of the team from day one. One resource I've had a lot of luck with is our company onboarding guides. They really can walk us through some of the things, some of the tasks, and some of the, the bullet points, the things that really we should be doing early on. And also, you want to be clear about a timeline with your new team member. Clearly set out your expectations for the first 30, 60, and 90 days, 6 months down the road, and make sure that you are, you're clearly addressing what those are.
Those are great points, and also, Marianne, just say that sometimes we take for granted things, especially if you've been in your department or in your company for a long time. And so, the tips on this last slide, I think, can really help us to remember. They're starting from scratch; they know nothing, and the things that you take for granted, it helps, I think, to just remember. All of this is new learning for them, and help them be able to find those resources. Yeah,
thoroughly agree. I actually, when I joined Dolby a few years ago, I'd been at the same company for 10 years. So a bit of a shock going from knowing everything and everyone and all the history to feeling like I knew nothing. So I personally appreciated those sort of some of the guidance that I got. I mean, we all sit through a new hire orientation, and here's where you find everything, and but of course it's sort of a jumble of information. So keeping that in mind as your new person joins, really, what are the resources you can provide to them, and the guidance you can give to help them really get off to a good start and move forward quickly. So next we want to talk about, career development too, because once you get them on board, that development is key, really, I think, to the long-term success. And everybody views development differently. Everybody's going to have different sets of goals and what they sort of aspire to and they want to, make of the role. But I think you can kind of start this process in the interview itself. So as you're interviewing candidates, really look at areas that, where they might be able to grow. If there's, as you're going through the job description, there might be the best candidate maybe didn't have experience in everything. There's some opportunities for learning and growth. And so what you can do is really utilize this time to sort of start the groundwork and the plan for career development going forward. We've just got a lot of, notes on kind of career pathing. I think it's really important to ask the employee what they are interested in doing in the future. I personally always try to kind of get input from my team. What do you really like doing? And then my assessment of where the strengths are and such. Sometimes that can really help you in guiding somebody down the road of development, finding out where their strengths are, maybe where some of their weaknesses are that they could actually improve and grow in the role more. So you really want to help them find opportunities to kind of participate in projects or take new things on or, take additional courses in certain areas. I think career pathing and career development, sometimes we get confused with that's a promotion. It's not necessarily a promotion. It's really just expanding your role, your knowledge, and I think the value that you bring to the organization. So really working with this new person and your team in general to help them build this plan out. I think that this is, career pathing should be really a partnership between you and your employee, providing them these opportunities to really move forward and grow in the role. And then next one to talk on, these are just a lot of bullet points and some really helpful things to cover in the first 30 days. I'm not going to really read them all off, but really what you want to do is make sure within those first 30 days your new team member is set up to succeed. So you'll just want to make sure that you get them the equipment they need, get them the knowledge that they need, introduce them and get them involved in the organizations that they'll want to be a part of. And I think that's really what's going to help their success as well. And I think, Andrea, with that, I'll hand that off to you.
Great. So, so I promised that we would mention some alternatives to hiring in case the effort, cost, and risk equation is not working in favor of you taking the time, the effort, the expense to do this, and knowing that, hey, you know what, you may find that right person for your team, and then after a year or two, they're gone. And so you're back to the drawing board. So that may not be the kind of thing you want to be investing your time and energy in every couple of years. So what other alternatives are there? You could consider outsourcing. Whether it's the departmental needs assessment itself, say you're like, I need to figure out what I need. Can someone help me? You could bring in support for that. You could bring in support for the recruiting function, the screening of the candidates, the interviewing, or just placement services in general. You can bring in help for special skill sets and projects. Say you decide, look, I don't want to hire. This is going to be someone. If I keep them on staff year-round, it's going to be incredibly expensive, but perhaps I only need them for a short term, in which case it makes more sense to bring someone in short-term than to actually make this a hire. You can outsource the administrative functions, even the management functions. You can outsource the entire department. And so depending on what you think is right for you, considering alternatives where perhaps you're not bringing in another headcount, but you're actually staffing these roles with a look to the long term with strategic partners. They could come from the vendor side. They could come from companies like SOS. There are a lot of options out there, and it's a great thing to consider because many will offer that security that there won't be any effective turnover because they're going to be having backup for you and they're going to have historical knowledge, and so you're never going to be without that. And that may be a kind of solution that makes sense to you in the needs of your organization. And now we're getting really close to the end, and we've got our top takeaways. Marianne's going to start that off. Marianne?
Hi, sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
This is the mute button. First off, take your time to hire the right person. The key is that this is a long-term success for both of you, for the department and for the candidate. And I think I just wanted to quickly mention too is, this might be an area where SOS or a firm like that could be helpful. It's not just get a body in the door right away. Take your time to do the right, to get the right person in the door. Perhaps in the interim, some alternatives are bringing in a consultant, et cetera, to allow you the time. Use hard data to demonstrate the ROI. Make sure that you are able to convey to management that, yes, this additional headcount is really going to bring value, and specifically and clearly state what that value is. You want to definitely hire for the cultural fit, not just the skill set. You want this person to be successful long term. They're going to have to fit within the organization. The manager, know thyself. Ask for feedback. And really know who you are, understand your management style, and how that's going to work well with the potential candidates. You want to be an all-star employer. Andrea had some great suggestions here on ways that you can do that. And then also you want to use your job description as an advertisement. That's what's going to get the right candidates in the door in the first place.
And definitely leverage your network, partner with internal recruiting, divide and conquer when interviewing to assess multiple areas, get your onboarding right, first impressions are lasting, leverage internal learning, and we're moved on to the last one. You can pick that top takeaway when you check our presentation online. Shauna?
Great. Thank you so much, Andrea and Marianne, for presenting today, and thank all of you for attending today's educational webcast. Please go ahead and look for an email in the next few days with links to the recording and materials. Thank you again, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.